So on this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we've got our very first director. He directed many great films like The Blue Lagoon, White Fang, Grease, and The Flight of the Navigator. It's, of course, Randal Kleiser. Randal, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
My pleasure. It's always good to talk to you. We tried last week and it didn't work because I was in my car.
Modern technology and canyons can not work together, I think, which we have discovered. But before we talk about Flight of the Navigator and this wonderful new documentary, Life After the Navigator, how is everything with you, with work and COVID and everything like that at the moment?
I have been able to do some writing, which is great. I've been working on a couple books. I have one book that I finished called Grease, the Director's Notebook, that's out from HarperCollins. And now I'm working on two more. And I'm going to pitch a series to the streaming platforms. So I've been real busy. Also building some smart stages here in Los Angeles where directors can come and shoot with LED walls and green screen and virtual production. So I think that COVID has actually sped up a lot of things that would have taken a longer time to develop, such as more video conferencing like this. People are all doing it now. Online learning has gone through the roof, of course, because it had to, but actually people are discovering that this is a form of communication that works really well, and even when the virus is gone or controlled, people will be using this a lot more. So I think there's some benefits, not benefits, but some good things that have happened because of this pandemic. But it's
you know what? I think because of obviously the pandemic is not a fantastic thing, but I've got to say, the creativity that's going to come out of this, I've been saying to everyone, is going to be unbelievable. That explosion of creativity, writing new series and films, I suppose that is the silver lining. We're going to get, unbelievable shows at the end of this, and unbelievable films.
That's true, because people can now concentrate on things. Like before the pandemic, I could never sit down and focus and write, but I've been able to now.
That is wonderful. So let's talk about Life After the Navigator. This is a documentary directed by Lisa Downs at Spear Change Films. Lisa gave me advanced viewing of the documentary, and
Good.
I've got to say it's absolutely stunning, and it's hitting our screens on the 9th of December, and you can pre-order the Blu-ray right now. How did the documentary come about for you? Because you're classed as an executive producer on the actual project.
When I heard that Joe Cramer had robbed a bank, I was in shock, because knowing Joey as I did do, he's a good kid, and I just couldn't believe it. So I tried to reach out, but I couldn't find him anywhere. And finally, I tracked down his mother. She told me he was in jail and I could write to him, and I did, and he wrote back and told me what had happened, which is all included in the documentary. This amazing story of why he robbed the bank is all in there. And it'll surprise everyone because, the biggest issue is his father told him he should kill himself, and that would screw up anybody. Anyhow, so I knew it was a really great story, and because I'm writing my memoirs right now, I started writing about it, and then I heard from Lisa Day, or I'd seen her first show, Life After Flash, which was very good, about Flash Gordon and the actor Sam Jones. And what happened to him after he shot that movie. But Joey's story is much more dramatic because of the bank robbery. And so I knew it would be a really interesting movie, and when Lisa said she wanted to make it, I wanted to help out any way I could.
Yeah, and I've got to say, seeing all the stars over 30 years later coming together in the same room is an absolute delight to see. How was it seeing all those casts back together for the first time?
When I called my cast members for Flight of the Navigator and the producers and said that this documentary was happening, and they'd heard about Joey, they heard about him robbing the bank, and they were all curious and fascinated and wondered why and how and what. So I told them a little bit why he did it and what he'd gone through, the stuff he'd gone through, and they all jumped at the chance to support him and come and meet again and talk to him and see how he's doing. So we got a sound stage in Hollywood, the one I'm working on with making virtual productions. And we all joined together there and met with Joey. And then we also arranged to show Flight of the Navigator at the American Cinematheque at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood Boulevard. And we had a big screening, and that was packed with fans. And afterwards, Joey was signing autographs. And so, you know, he's really getting back up on his feet. And he's available to do other movies. I think he's a very good actor, and I think his career could get back on track now.
Well, he's definitely working now, because I was actually set to interview him today, but he's on set working, so he's
really?
obviously doing all right.
Do you know what he's shooting?
He's shooting a thriller. Let me just have a look on here, because he actually did post something not that long ago.
That's great to hear.
But yeah, it's really good, because I know that obviously he wanted to get back to acting, and I've got to say the documentary for me, you know, throughout watching it, I laughed, I cried, and at the end, you know, as you said about the bank robbery, you know, when I first heard about that, I was like, what, he's gone crazy. But then when you watch the documentary, it really opens your eyes to issues that Joey has had, as well as many other people out there, and how much help is needed for those people. Yeah, he's on a production called 12 Step Strangler. It's by Haley House Productions, so he's on set filming that. So I'm sure I'll get an insight of what that is when I interview him. So yeah, so this documentary, I've got to say, you know what, I think all the fans are screaming out for it, and I think it's going to do very well when it gets released, I've got to say. But talking about Flight of the Navigator, you know, what I love about the movies from the 80s is that a lot of the effects were done for the very first time, which must have been so challenging for a director. Is there any effect that comes to mind that was challenging for you on that production?
Well, the ship was the thing I wanted to do differently from all the other movies that I had seen, you know, like Star Wars and E.T. and all those movies. I wanted to find a way to make something different. And my brother does visual effects. And so he showed me a new thing, which was called morphing. At the time, no one had done it, where you can change from one shape to another. And he had done it with a bottle of Tide for a commercial. And I saw that, I said, wow, could we do that with the ship? And he said, yeah. And then I saw in a book on special effects, this idea of, it's called image-based lighting, where you take the background of a picture and you wrap it onto a computer graphic maquette to create something that looks like mirror. And so we combine those two things together, the shape change and the idea of image-based lighting, and that's how we made the ship. And no one had seen something like that before. And the next year, I believe it was, James Cameron used that technique for Terminator 2 to create the cop that was mirrored.
There you go. You started it all Randall. You know, I've got to say, you know, the effects. I mean, I watched the actual film again the other day, because from Second Sight Films, you can actually get the limited edition DVD, which is from the 4K scan, which has got some great extras in there, including the storyboard and lots of fun facts and information in there. But why do you think the film has got such a following 34 years later? It's crazy, looking back all those years.
Well, I think the theme is very identifiable. I mean, especially people who have a sibling, a brother or a sister, because the idea of a younger brother becoming an older brother is fascinating to anybody who has a sibling. That I don't think has been done in other movies that I can think of. So that's a theme that people love. The idea of losing a family and then regaining them is another theme that I think people can identify with. Um, the joy of having a space alien as a friend is certainly something that's been done a lot, but in this case, it was just done a little differently. And we had Paul Rubens doing the voice.
Oh, he was
And
fantastic.
I guess, you know, the effects being sort of like not in your face so much as you find today with a lot of the movies where there's just so many visual effects that you can't, you know, it feels like a fire hose in your
Mm.
face. Um, this is done little more sparingly and with thought. I mean, not that they don't have thought, but it's just too much a lot of the times, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got to say though, the effects still stand up now. I think it's fantastic. You know, the work on that movie was outstanding, and they always say as well, talking about kids, they always say never work with animals and children, but you've actually worked with animals and children quite a bit in your past with White Fang and Fly to the Navigator. How is that working with animals and kids as a director in general?
Well, working with any actor, you have to have an action, something that they want to do. And it's the same with children or animals. They have to have a goal. And with animals, it's usually food. The trainer has food on one end and the animal wants to get to it, or the animal wants to do the trick to get the food. Uh, with children, you know, you just have to make it into a game so that they have something that they want, and then you get them to do it that way.
Mm. I mean, watching the movie now, Fly to the Navigator. Now I'm older. You know what? I've realised how good Joey is as an actor. You know,
Yeah.
back then in that movie, you know, watching him and the emotions. How was he to direct? Because he was such an an amazing, you know, actor at that age.
Well, we saw about 300 kids uh, to find Joey, and when I worked with him on this screen test, I could tell that he was the one because he was able to immediately become emotional and get tears in his eyes when he was talking, and he was just very in touch with his emotions, and so um, he was easy to direct. I mean, I just would, you know, roll the camera and he would get into it, and I just had to tell him a little bit to get him in the mood, and then he would do it.
Yeah.
So he was a really fine actor, and I'm sure that, you know, he's now that he's back on his feet, he can regain that momentum.
Yeah. And back then, I don't know if it's changed now, but obviously the laws of working with kids and how many hours you can actually have them working, is that changed now, or is it the same as, you know, back then?
I believe it's the same. I think different ages, you know, there's a cutoffs.
Mm.
4 hours for one age group, or maybe 6 for another. It gets more as they get older. But babies, I think, are still only like an hour. I don't know if it's an hour or less. I do remember one crazy time when I was directing TV, our TV. I was working with a baby, and they didn't want the baby's eyes to be bright. They didn't want the lights to be bright on the baby's eyes. So they had to turn off all the lights in the sound stage and bring the baby in. And then they turned the lights on, rolled the camera, and then turn them back off. But they had the baby waiting outside to come into the dark sound stage in the sunlight. So it's absolutely crazy.
Wow, yeah, it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever.
No,
Um, so when the movie first came across your desk, so Fly to the Navigator, the pitch came across your desk, and you read it for the first time. What was your first impressions of that movie?
well, I always wanted to do a sci-fi movie. I've always loved them. I've loved Boris Karloff was one of my favorite actors, and I loved all the space films that I saw when I was a kid, and I subscribed to Famous Monsters of Filmland, and that was the only movie as a boy that showed a little bit of behind the scenes of how you make a movie. You know, nowadays you can see it on YouTube, everything. But
Mm.
back then, when I was a boy, there was nobody talking about how you make movies, and that was one of the comics, or not magazines, that showed that. And
Yeah.
plus, I just loved it. So I was very excited to do a space movie.
And was there anything that was filmed but never made it to the screen, which, looking back, you wish would have?
I think the only thing that I wish we could have done was go to the Kennedy Space Center, which we were scheduled to go to. But the week before we went, the Challenger disaster happened. So we had to,
Right.
instead of going there, we had to use I think it was a sewage plant, and turn it into NASA.
Wow, you obviously did a good job, because I wouldn't have thought that. Because what I loved as well during watching the film was how you use the perspective of the camera. So when obviously David Freeman is at NASA, there were a few shots where we was looking at it from David's perspective. And I thought that was fantastic. Is that shot commonly used? Um,
You mean just his point, what he sees? You mean?
Yes, yes. So obviously the people are talking down the camera to him, and you feel a lot more sucked into David and what he's feeling. I think that's brilliantly done.
Yes, the point of view camera is very helpful, and that works really, really well in virtual reality, which is something I just have been experimenting with lately, with a series called Defrost VR, and anybody who has a headset can find that at veer.com, VER. Actually, defrostvr.com is a place you can go to track it down, but it's where you're completely the point of view of the character, and you become a woman who's been frozen for 30 years, and she's brought back to life, and you are her, and people are talking to you, and you look around the room, and it's 360, and
Wow.
it's amazing that when actors look into the VR camera, it feels not like they are actors, but they're real people looking right at your eyes, because it's all in 3D, and it's that's the ultimate point of view, is this way we did Defrost VR.
It must be totally crazy for you, because obviously starting, in the late 70s to now, that technology is crazy on where it's gone, isn't it? I just
Yes, and I did a thing for Intel and Paramount, which was a virtual reality music video, where you will be able to take your phone and you click on it, and suddenly there's 20 dancers dancing on the desktop or on the rug, wherever you want to do it, and you can go in with your phone and move around and look at them as they dance through a song from Greece. You're the one that I want.
Oh, wonderful! Is that like augmented reality sort of
Yes,
thing?
on
Oh, that
augmented
is
reality. Yeah.
awesome. That is awesome. So what was your proudest, or is your proudest moment of Flight of the Navigator when you look back?
I think some of the flying shots I look so beautiful. When the spaceship is flying across the ocean and it's reflecting the clouds and the water. I mean, that still looks good today. And I think the scene. I love the scene where the spaceship is crashed and the camera dollies along, and you see the broken down tower and the
Mm.
sparks going off, and then they find the ship's floating there. That's kind of fun. I like that. That feels like it's from an old sci-fi movie.
And would you ever, if it came across your desk, do a sequel, or do you not believe in sequels?
Well, I prefer to do new things, and I'm very excited about some of the projects I'm working on. So, I mean, if I could fit it in, maybe, but my focus is more on new stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they talk about sequels or remakes, I think they really should leave it alone, because it can never bring back that nostalgia of being. I think I was about 7 years old when I saw it. So, from your point of view, what makes a good director, Randall?
I think somebody who can relate to people, who has empathy and can get that across, because you always want the viewer to become involved emotionally in your film, whether it's fear or excitement or romance or nostalgia. You want them to feel something. It's not just pictures. So you have to, as a director, know how people think and how they react, and try to trigger those moments for them.
And what other director out there do you think is doing a sterling job?
Well, Christopher Nolan is wonderful. Scorsese is great. I mean, I love Scorsese's films because you really do get involved in them in a heavy-duty way, and he just is a great storyteller. I think he's probably my favorite director.
And what sort of films are you itching to do yourself? If you had a choice on the type of movie that you wanted to direct, what sort of movie would that be?
I'd like to do a big science fiction movie. I have one in mind, and but I'm trying to get the rights to it. And I've got a film set in a Mexican prison, and I have another one that's romance in Paris. So I've got a bunch of
Yeah.
scripts ready to go. Just
I
looking
think
for.
that's Law of Escape, isn't it? That the one, the
Yes,
Mexican
that's
prison,
right.
that
Yeah,
actually looks an amazing film. I mean, it's based on true events,
right.
and just reading up on that film, I'm excited. I want to watch it now. I really do. It looks
Well,
awesome. Um, so how has Hollywood changed over the years from where you started out doing like films, the wonderful films like Grease onwards? How has Hollywood changed for you over the years in the way that they make movies, in the way they cast?
the Hollywood studio system has changed a lot. I mean, there used to be many movies being made, and now because of blockbusters, that's the only ones that they make. So smaller movies are being done mostly for streaming services. So that's a big
Mm,
change. The way films are shot is completely different from when I started, which was on film, and now everything is digital, and and you know, virtual production has started to become used, but because of the COVID situation, it's being ramped up really fast.
mm.
And I'm right now helping to build 3 sound stages in Hollywood that will be able to use that technology. So that's one of the big changes. People are now wanting to shoot Paris in a sound stage rather than go there.
Yeah, which obviously location shooting is never going to replace green screen, I suppose, to an extent. But what would you change about Hollywood if you could change anything?
Uh, I would change it by having filmmakers decide what movies are made instead of executives that have come from their lawyers or people who are not filmmakers. I think in the old days there were executives who were creative, and now there's committees that think about marketing and should this movie be made, or what's did the last movie that this actor shoot make money. It's all become very bean counter like, and there used to be more instincts involved.
Mm. I mean, I've got to say, it's like talking about like Joey Cramer, because obviously, back when he was doing Flight of the Navigator, it really propelled him into stardom, and he was wanted by many productions, even being offered Star Trek, having a part on that. I mean, what do you think would help Joey in Hollywood now? In the way
What
of
will help
propelling
Joey in
his,
Hollywood now?
yeah.
What will help Joe? What will help Joey in Hollywood now is people seeing life after the Navigator and seeing his story and seeing how he is now and how charming and likable he is now, and knowing that he's a good actor. So, I mean, all those factors together should help him launch back up into more work. And I'm so
Yeah.
happy he's working even today.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. So obviously, what's next for you? What can we see of yours coming up very soon?
I think the 2 things are defrostvr.com,
Yep.
and then this music video from Paramount, the Grease music video should be coming out. I'm not quite sure when.
Oh, that is awesome. And just quickly before we wrap up this wonderful interview, you was roommates with George Lucas. I've been told. Is that correct?
That's true, yes.
And please tell me that you gave him the idea for Star Wars.
No, but I was an actor in his very, very first film that he ever made, which was a wind-up 16 millimeter Bolex film. We shot in Malibu Canyon, and it's called Freiheit. It's on YouTube. Freiheit, F-R-E-I-H-E-I-T. It means freedom in German, and I play a German student escaping across the Berlin border and then being shot. So that's his first movie.
That is wonderful. That is, and what is he like as a person? Because he seems quite a reserved gentleman.
Yes, he never gets excited about anything. I always would try to say, "Hey, George, isn't this exciting?" He'd say, "Not really." He's
Wow.
very low key, except when he gets angry. But he's always thinking, always working, and you know, he Walt Disney was one of my idols when I was a kid, and I didn't ever believe that I would be rooming with the next Walt Disney.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's gone a long way, and has obviously rubbed off on you because you have produced some amazing movies that are standing the they're timeless, like Grease and Flight of the Navigator, to name a few. And I've got to say thank you so much for Flight of the Navigator. It really paved my childhood, and Life of the Navigator, I think's really put the cherry on the cake. To give it that nod. And I'm sure that sales of Flight of the Navigator is definitely going up in the next few months. Randall, thank you so much for this time to interview you. All the best and keep safe. What are you up to for the rest of the day? Are you relaxing or?
I'm going to be writing the rest of the day, so I
Oh, wonderful,
always love doing that, and now I can.
wonderful. Randall, thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Brian.